Hey, what's going on? It's Chris Carino. This is the voice of the Nets, joined by my longtime radio partner, Tim Capstraw, and Lucas Kaplan of NetsDaily. If you're a diehard Net fan, and you know who you are, you must be tuned in to NetsDaily. Anything that happens in Net World, you're going to find it on NetsDaily. They do an unbelievable job. To think that started out as just basically like a little fan site thing. We talked about Bob, John Schumann.
John Schumann and Robert started that years ago, Chris.
Yeah.
Like, we're 3 years into our NBA, our Nets time together. And, boy, that's become really special. I think Robert is one of the great GMs in New York sports. I mean, his talent evaluation and his development of young talent at NetsDaily, guys that we've seen, Matt Brooks, Matt Pooch.
Yeah, you're talking.
All the guys.
You're not talking about his evaluation of NBA players. You're talking about his evaluation of guys he brings in to work for him.
Exactly. He's one of the great GMs in the New York area.
Yes, and Lucas Kaplan is Exhibit
right.
A right here with us.
Great transition. Thank you guys for having me on again, and shout out to Bob, of course.
And John Schumann, the original who is now at NBA.
And John Schumann. And the legend John Schumann.
The legend, yes, the shoe. We're going to get into Cam Johnson right now. Now, we're kind of internally, we've kind of dubbed this series of podcasts on the players that are still remaining on the team this year, the holdovers, the guys who are still here. And it reminded me of the great movie in 2023 that got a lot of Oscar nominations and a lot of Oscar attentions called The Holdovers with Paul Giamatti. I know, Capper, it's one of your probably best of 2023 movies.
Yeah, especially because I saw 2 movies that year. Yeah.
Well, but basically the premise is that a bunch of kids at a boarding school, high school, it's winter break. But there's a handful of guys that their parent, for whatever reason, they have to remain at the school. And then what happens is, as you get a few days in, one of the guys' fathers comes and goes to take the kid skiing, and he brings everybody with him.
Right.
But one kid couldn't get in touch with his parents, so he has to stay with Paul Giamatti and the staff there. But it ends up being a life-changing experience for them. And it's a terrific film, if anybody wants to see it. But Cam Johnson is he may end up being one of the guys that goes skiing, right? Because we don't know if Cam Johnson's going to stay the rest of the year here. So he's one of the holdovers. But he may be a guy that Sean Marks can use to be more in line with the timeline and the rebuild here. What we've seen of Cam Johnson in the past and what we know about him and his character, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that we see the Cam Johnson, the promise, what we saw in the playoffs a couple of years ago. We see that guy again this year.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about his season, he got slowed down by a lot of various injuries that may not have kept him out for months at a time, but a couple games here, a couple weeks there.
Just enough to disrupt the flow.
Hard to get a rhythm.
Yeah. And we saw him in the playoffs against Philadelphia 2 years ago, where I thought he was the Nets' best player. He showed a toughness. Remember that dunk he had in Philly over Embiid? Right? That's the guy you want to see. And whether or not it's, to raise his trade value or what he becomes helps this team win games this year. I don't know. I'm curious and excited to see where Cam Johnson moves on to this year.
Listen, I think a great point with the injuries last year, because that stands out to me. He's the kind of guy that if he doesn't go anywhere, Chris, and I think the Nets have a couple of these guys, that when you have a young organization, it's really important to have mature pros that really get it, that understand everything around young, new NBA players. I think he's perfect in that regard. You think he had an off season, but I mean, I guess the standards, and then he had a good contract, so that always plays into
Yeah, I mean,
it.
he set the bar. He raised the bar for himself when he first got to the Nets, and then the contract he signed. I mean, he set the bar high for himself.
Yeah, and right. And it came off the playoffs, and he was aggressive, and he was going. Still shot 39% from three. He still shot the ball well. I remember saying a couple times he wasn't playing as much, and he would go into the game, and he'd have an edge to him. And I'd say, I like angry Cam Johnson. I like him a lot. I think he's got to play. That edge becomes an important factor for him. He can't be. I don't love when he's a spectator. I love when he's totally involved. He's intense. He's focused, and he's ticked off. That's when he's a really effective player because he complements that with an all-around game. Obviously his shooting, but he's got great size. He can attack the basket. He certainly his positional defense is very good, and I think there's he's a class guy. He's an important guy to have in an organization if he's with the Nets or if he's with somebody else.
Yeah, I love that you pointed out his edge and aggression. The thing that I always remember about that Philly series, he was the guy completely unafraid of attacking Embiid at the rim. Embiid, a great rim protector, obviously, but you can't let that dissuade you from trying to get points in the paint. And Cam Johnson was the guy that was like, I'm going to the free throw line. I'm going to the rim. He had the dunk, but he had a lot of finishes in the paint. And what you said about Cam is true. And there just aren't a lot of guys in the NBA that are 6'8", 6'9", will shoot 40% from three or close to it every year, and be in the right spots all the time and guard their guy on defense. It, again, is not the most flashy skill set. It is not the one that produces a ton of highlights, but it's not that common either. His floor as a player is always going to be pretty high just because of what he brings to the floor.
I think the better the team, the better the player he is. I think he needs to be a fifth Beatle, on the lineup sometimes out there. The ball finds him, and he's around a real lot of talent, and he just can knock down shots and make plays and be solid all around. I think there's going to be a lot of those teams that are upper echelon teams trying to pursue him during this season. That's for sure. Yeah,
and maybe for this net team right now, he becomes more of a guy they're going to have to rely on in that regard, and we'll see if he can grow into that role. Or, yeah, like you said, a good team out there looking for a guy that can fill out their roster. Absolutely.
Not just their roster, their starting lineup, I think. He would be in a playing group. He would go play.
And with this net team, like you said, an adult in the room.
An adult. Got to have them.
Because Cam Johnson is just a fantastic person. Can't say enough about when he's in a setting with fans or has to be out in the community and teammates. I mean, just a very engaging person. And from a basketball family. And, we'll see what happens this year. Like I said, will he get in the helicopter and go on the skiing trip? Or is he going to stick it out with Paul Giamatti and help everyone there find their place in the world?
I missed your stories so well. Your analogy, or whatever you call them. Yeah, it's unbelievable.
Do you like my beard that I'm going with?
I love your beard. I mean, that probably was maybe a little awkward. I'm sorry about that.
That may be a holdover from the summer. I started not shaving in the summer, and I think I might hold it over.
You look
the
really good
season.
With it. I hate to say, you look really good with the beard. You got a little edge. Like you might take
edge.
me out if I say the wrong thing during a game. Like, give me a look.
Lucas Kaplan, Tim Capstraw, Lucas of NetsDaily, Tim Capstraw, daily with the Nets. The Iron Man.
Nice.
We finished last year, the last day of the regular season in Philadelphia with you were over was it 1,900, right, Capper?
Yeah, 1,900 games in a row.
Consecutive games.
Count. Yep, consecutive.
Well, we were counting. Yes, producer Frank DeGrace counts and lets us know the number because you're too modest to come up with that number on your own.
Not everything that counts can be counted, man. That's what I say.
Lucas is going to do stats on you this year.
There's a wealth of bars being dropped, numbers. I'm just soaking it up.
Yeah. Sports jackets.
beards,
outfits. Yeah, there are a lot of things we can keep track of, and we will, and we'll continue with our holdover series of the Nets as we get you ready for training camp and the 2024-2025 season coming up. Thanks to Lucas Kaplan, Tim Capstraw. I'm Chris Carino. This is the Voice of the Nets.